basically teaching to go to some school. And this is really fun. This
Depending
is
on
not
who all you
understand.
want to reach out to, I've got Mansell, Mansfield,
We played Benjamin already.
Simsboro, Saline,
Okay.
like
So if
I
you
don't
could
have all
hold
the people, but I do have people if you need
well, I
extra
have
people.
so far, I have friends with
All right, good morning again, everyone.
law school.
Good morning.
And my name is Charles Thomas. I teach math and coach football and track at Zachary. Actually, more of the field throwers on my side of the world. So definitely welcome. Thank y'all for coming out today. The title I'm going to present about is coaching students' performance and solving problems. And this is a deeper dive into academic coaching for mathematics. This is something that I've actually researched and presented on before with the ACT Summit earlier this year, and actually kind of extends back to some of my doctoral research in leadership development, where my focus was personalizing those frameworks um, in some fashion. So, of course, my background in athletics, that's the framework that I approached that from. And so, definitely seeing a lot of connections between that and helping my current effort in teaching students math, something that I'm still very interested in seeing and sharing as well. So the abstract of this again is there's a demonstrated benefit of how academic coaching is helping in college levels. And that previous review, I looked at a lot of that literature from um, academic coaching in the college level, on the college level, and needed to explore how do we actually implement that better on the high school level, and especially given how you have to consider parental involvement and a lot of those things, because a lot of the college emphasis, of course, is based on that you're dealing with adults over 18. A lot of those rights in education, you can kind of focus on that responsibility for high school, I mean for college students as more adults. But of course, on the high school level, we want to push that self-determination and responsibility, but still have to incorporate those concerns with parental rights and so forth. So that previous presentation delved a lot deeper into that, and I want to see how to kind of extend that into approaching teaching math, but from this perspective of how do you incorporate the academic coaching research as well. Now, with a lot of that, because that's an extension of what's already been demonstrated on the college level to high school, there's not a lot of empirical evidence for it now. So I want to look at how to also connect some evidence from anecdotal events and experiences in coaching. Oh, sorry about that. And coaching in the sports world to see if that actually supports some of this effort as well. So a little bit about me. I've been in education over 20 years. About 11 of that has been in the classroom. I've also done some nonprofit work, consulting work, in addition to the athletic work, coaching. Also got a chance to referee football, basketball. Currently a referee also with the LSU Track and Field Association, track and field officials. Um, I actually did my doctoral research at TCU. I got a chance to also do some work as an academic, uh, a graduate assistant with the athletic department, student athletes. And then me and my wife, we have 6 kids who are all in Zachary schools. Um, and like I said, I teach and coach at Zachary High now currently as well. So to introduce this, a lot of course, the uh, meaning and purpose behind a lot of this research that I'm looking to connect. I'm just kind of one of those realist persons. A lot of my coaching background is influenced from people like Nick Saban, Jared Nardo, who, from a very detailed, oriented perspective, they're just real questions, real concerns we have to address in order to really dig deep into accomplishing certain goals. So, one of the things for me is what is this balance of the I and team when it comes down to how we teach in the classroom, especially the math classroom? Because there's a big push for rigor. Now, if you go to a lot of get a lot of feedback from businesses and universities, of course, with graduating students and great ACTs, great test scores, but there's a lot of feedback that someone just unprepared for very rigorous thinking, critical thinking skills, social emotional concerns. And so, with that concern of rigor and those things, especially from an athletic standpoint, go back to how you overcome adversity, facing tough challenges, all those things. what are those connections with the academic world, especially teaching math, that I want to pursue? And of course, with the accountability narratives, who's attributed blame and all those things, the tensions that go on between parent, teacher, school leaders, district leaders, all the agendas and things. And that just kind of intuitively exacerbates a lot of the achievement gap concerns that we have. And so there's this tension now between the actual eye of individual performance for students versus school-wide performance, where sometimes those individuals can get left behind, even though certain schools have good success overall. So where is that balance for how we get students now to appreciate their role in that? And I think one of the best persons to kind of sum that up is Kobe, as quoted by Shaq, because yeah, we can start looking at what various leaders can do to deal with that challenge more effectively. You know, while there is a valid concern for the whole team and the whole school, especially in high school, we have to begin to embrace this mentality that there may be an ME in team that you have to put into it from the perspective of students taking their responsibility and self-determination in their learning. And so, of course, I can't put the actual quote Shaquille O'Neal used describing what Kobe said about this. But like I said, this is kind of the mentality that academic coaching has to connect to when you talk about self-determination and self-regulated learning that we're going to get a little deeper into from students embracing their role and what they have to do, similar to that mentality that Kobe had. And so the structural support needs, when we look, and I don't have time to really get into a lot of that previous research I did, but in terms of self-determination needs, where autonomy, confidence, and then relatedness or involvement are part of those self-determination needs that we're trying to support in coaching efforts. And so how does that really connect deeper to math as well? So first, like I said, I made the case for academic coaching in high school in a previous review, where we have to kind of acknowledge the tracking influence, where we tend to have a lot of high performers, middle performers, low performers, and just in the tensions of how all that melds and everything we're trying to accomplish as educators, we definitely are rightfully proud of creating all the high performers that are successful and the accolades that we get for those high performers. But again, we have to recognize we can't leave behind low performers and even middle performers who it can kind of go either way with those students. So a lot of these in terms of the assumptions of these different levels and how tracking can influence that, because when we're trying to prepare students for rigorous expectations, uh, there's the concern that you have to get students to buy into how this is going to be important for them. And a lot of the research that I point to, in this case, in terms of the intervention programs that are used in high school, some of those things are already demonstrated, and how some of those post-secondary preparation programs are beneficial in getting students to kind of personalize that goal of embracing rigorous education, rigorous learning expectations. Uh, Programs like Avid, I actually got a chance to work with that program when I was teaching out in Texas. And some of the themes that are very strong in those types of program approaches, it is the responsibility that students have in embracing the need for autonomous effort and rigorous expectations, rigorous learning. That, of course, when you have low performing students, sometimes they become a little more apathetic about approaching those rigorous efforts, especially in problem solving. And so one of the concerns again is that tracking can exacerbate that, where it's a reality. I mean, I have high performing high school student that I know the benefit that if she's not in the program or in the classroom, kind of being influenced or disrupted by students, the gains that they continue to receive or get. But like I said, how do we embrace the benefits of this, but also make sure we have something that's going to meet the needs of these students? Because there is evidence that shows some students didn't embrace those low expectations once they're tracked into low performing classrooms. You know, it's the expectation. We're almost kind of communicating to them that they're not going to achieve on a certain level, so they embrace that, they personalize that, and so it actually becomes kind of a rebuilding of a certain mentality, what you can do again, analogous to athletes who have to embrace their confidence and desire to achieve whatever skill or competition they want to win at.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Can you define academic coaching?
Yes. Well, like I said, that was.
Because I think I'm not quite understanding.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Well, okay. So that goes again into the motor learning connection to learning versus performance, where performance is inferred by, oh, I'm sorry, learning is inferred by an observable performance.
Okay.
And so now, how do we coach students to do something that's more observable? Now, of course, with assessment, a lot of that becomes the data.
Just like regular classroom teaching is being coaching, or you're talking about a program that is a separate academic coaching program?
Both, because there has to be kind of the initiative behind it to get it embraced, and then you'll see how it's basically integrated into everyday teaching that should go on. That's kind of my opinion. Yes, I think it's teaching that recognizes what performance you're coaching out of students, regardless of subject. Yeah, it will be incorporated into it, but I think right now.
What is the it that will be incorporated in? What is it?
Well, I guess. So again, I'm trying not to recap the previous presentations, but yeah. All right, on the college level, especially right now, a lot of those coaching programs, it ranges from a position, a counselor type position, academic counselor type position, who specializes in the academic coaching frameworks to help students individually. So those kind of programs that are, evident in the college level, it uses a lot of non-teachers to support students with the coaching frameworks. This, initiative that I'm proposing for high school, of course, we can incorporate those type of programs. And actually, the previous framework was recommended to be aligned with dean level positions. The same way you have a dean of students that deals with discipline, you can have a dean that deals with academic coaching efforts.
So like graduation coach kind of thing?
Similar to graduation, it's kind of one of those overlapping type positions, graduation coaches, parent liaisons, all those roles that can go into those type positions, but from the framework of understanding where the academic coaching is critical to the student self-determination needs. Because that's the key. Self-determination needs, where it's the autonomy of the student, the relatedness needs, the competence needs. How does that support specifically the student embracing this? And when you understand, again, the self-determination theories, that's just a broader framework of adult development, leadership development, a lot of those concepts that you're trying to begin at the high school level. Because again, a lot of adult learning theories, adolescence, a lot of those things, that's the high school level or high school age, that's just, it's beginning. So even though the maturity is not there, we've got to begin incorporating, kind of the adult thinking, the adult learning
The
approach.
skill set that has maturity.
Exactly.
Okay.
And hopefully, the maturity to kind of catch up to it. But I think truly reforming a lot of the challenges, closing those achievement gaps, we got to start recognizing those connections and those things. So like I said, I'm sorry, I'm still like I'm kind of breezing through that part of it because, like I said, I guess the evidence part of it, that's kind of what I'm just pointing to here in terms of the coaching anecdotal evidence that'll support these efforts as well. So does that answer the question? No? All right, good. Thank you. So again, in terms of making this case for academic coaching as the framework itself, I think the part of it is that's the reality that tracking, even though there are concerns of how it can affect low performing students, I think the reality is it's here to stay because the benefits as well. So as much as something can benefit, how do we then address what we see is kind of the negative impact or possible negative impact as well? And so that's why I believe that's kind of this all-in mentality that I've embraced with why academic coaching can help with middle and low performing students as well. So just to give you a little bit more about the academic coaching framework, again, it's about supporting self-determination needs that help or of course connect to a lot of motivation and why students are motivated to learn and perform. And self-regulated learning is another framework, and a lot of that's incorporated into the process of the autonomy support in terms of the process of self-regulated learning. So you hear those two terms a lot. Well, self-regulated learning has an emphasis on kind of the performance approach of the thought phase to actually performing something and then reflecting on it to modify it. And this overall framework is the self-determination needs where the need for autonomy, the need for confidence, and the need for relatedness are supported by the proposed structure that I have for how this academic coach can work in high schools. This was the bigger framework of that high school role that kind of incorporates the specific effort of what confidence you're building in each of these core subjects. Now, of course, there's overlap in each of these. You know, there are problem-solving activities in all core subjects. There are communication activities, written, verbal, in all core subjects. But the idea of kind of like specialized positions that we'll kind of look at in terms of anecdotal evidence as well. In sports, this is kind of the framework for how that works to support confidence in students. And then, of course, relatedness. When you talk about coaching, that also begin to connect to how do coaches interact with students or athletes. That is kind of analogous to trying to coach something out of students as well. And that involves the positive aspects, the tough love aspects, all those things that will go in coaching from that involvement standpoint as well. And there were a couple of implications that I noted initially, but I wanted to just highlight the specific one for confidence. When we look at the implications of teachers' efforts in keeping our job security certifications, where a lot of those kind of trade-offs can occur in terms of true confidence for the students versus enough to support the I guess, demonstrated ability or effectiveness of teachers. A lot of those tensions, of course, have to be recognized in terms of the implications for further research to just see how that does affect these type of frameworks. Because again, active learning as the student actively engaged versus active learning as we're doing something that gets students to create something observable that looks like they're learning, but maybe not truly connecting a lot of those things at a deeper level for competence. Then that's, again, kind of connected to what the feedback from universities and employers are giving us. And that's kind of one of those implications that I'd also noted in our previous framework. So teaching mathematics equals coaching students to solve problems. So again, this is just a little bit more of how the theoretical framework works in terms of this paradoxical combination of these two mindsets. Because of course, from coaching sports, we know it's voluntary, students want to do it. Of course, the observable performance goal, win the game, win the competition, more normative reference. And then it's kind of more individual, immediate week to week maybe, or even seeing what you succeed in that immediate competition, as opposed to teaching, where, yeah, it's more compulsory. You have things that students just have to do to graduate. It's not selective. I can't, only deal with the best athletes that's going to help me win, something like that. So how do you get every student to succeed? Of course, the observable performance goal in terms of passing tests or accomplishing assessment goals. And then this also, the goal aspect of it can be more delayed where, we can incorporate motivations like immediate rewards, PBIS kind of rewards, those type of things that we can connect an immediate connection to succeeding in the classroom. But ultimately, this is more of a delayed, extrinsic, and individually varied intrinsic reward that's coming from our teaching efforts in terms of preparing students for a career and college success down the road. And so with this framework as well, this kind of connects to some of the previous research that I've done. In my doctoral studies, I looked at a framework of leadership development that used sports as a framework for habits and awareness that are needed to develop ethical leadership. And in that sports framework, the habits for practice and preparation that was analogous to a perfect practice mentality in sports. A lot of folks may be familiar with that famous quote, and as much as I do sports, I'm blanking on the name of. Vince Lombardi. His quote on perfect practice, um, habitual study to understand just becoming like a student of the game, just those mentalities that we embrace in sports where the film study, all of the effort to study what we do, the rules, the strategies, just become, very connected as a student of the game that you play. And then the resolve, the adversity that you're going to face, very similar to that overtime mentality that you have to embrace sometimes. At the time I did this research, LSU and Alabama, that was at 2012 overtime game
That
for
one
the regular
wasn't
season.
overtime.
Huh?
That one wasn't overtime.
Which one?
The 2012.
It was 11 then.
11 was overtime.
11, that's right. So that's one of those. But that time, that's when I was finishing up this research. So that's kind of also a connection that I made in terms of just that overtime mentality. For resolve, you have to have in whatever you're pursuing with an ethical purpose as well, in terms of ethical leadership development. So with that framework, I'm now noticing those connections of the sports framework and that leadership development framework, the need support from self-determination and academic coaching, and how we can kind of substantiate this from anecdotal evidence in sports as well. And so based on seeing these alignments from that framework, and this gets a little bit more into some of the previous motor learning connections. Like I said, the motor learning aspect of it, when you look at self-regulated learning as a process, motor learning as a process of initial attempts, continuing to refine those attempts by reflectively continuing towards an autonomous performance phase. Again, a lot of those alignments are important as to setting up this anecdotal evidence validation as well. And I know if these slides are a little heavy, I'm going to definitely email those out if anyone would like to have to refer back to as well. So again, I know this initially is a lot of theory, and of course at the end of the day, we want to know where's the evidence and data for all this. And so just recognizing the empirical support and how that happens, it's just a very paradoxical situation in terms of trying to simplify complex concepts and all the things that go into how you try to justify something empirically. And then you got the challenges of how university research may not always align with where the rubber hits the road for teachers in the classroom. And so, do we really get any relevant and rigorous research that can justify or validate something like this? Because again, it doesn't exist from the high school level. All the things that I have researched and pointed to on the college level still didn't emphasize the sports or the background in sports that could help kind of validate a lot of these too, other than seeing some of those games that we've seen in some college programs. But the other side of trying to validate this in terms of data is self-reported data that's from school performance scores, which of course we know there's a lot of different challenges to that being accurate or reliable in terms of replicating results from one school to another. And again, I can point to some of my SLT results where I've had students that meet the expected or more than expected results. But again, in terms of being able to empirically point to this framework that I've tried to incorporate in what I'm already doing, given other contributing factors that may be involved in this, again, I can hopefully, substantiate that there is some benefit that this is created in my classroom based on those. But again, just the empirical proof of that is just going to be a little more challenging. So the best thing I kind of hope that we can kind of motivate and create some passion around this framework is anecdotal evidence where, how do the things that we know in sports and recognize in sports actually align with things that would make sense to support how this effort should support our students' learning in math and problem-solving performance. So what I did was I looked at different sports anecdotal evidence, and which kind of comes down to a lot of sports talk debates. Your most iconic championship performances, the debates on positionless versus specialized positions in different sports. Is it the exceptional coach or the exceptional player that's the real reason why some teams, and dynasties exist? And I saw the alignment between the framework that I've already researched in terms of the habits of uh, performance, the habits of study, and the habits of resolve, or that leads to resolve, and then how that connected with the need support within the framework for self-determination that a lot of the existing academic coaching uh, frameworks um, point to in the college level already. And so with those alignments, again, that's kind of the deeper discussion that I hope kind of helps make some connections as to how this can really take root and see some progress in classrooms. So first, when we talk about multi-college championship performance, we think about how that supports autonomy, because students have to buy into what they're doing in the classroom in terms of problem solving and why. And when we look at some of the evidence, again, there's a lot out there, a lot of people can point to, but some of the more well-known ones, the Jordan flu game, U.S. hockey miracle on ice, and gymnasts like Kerry Strug getting injured and still winning gold. A lot of those things, you have to have an autonomous purpose and why you want to achieve that. And again, a lot of times we assume in sports it's self-focused because again, we know Jordan's mentality, alpha male mentality that he's famous for, but that was still a more ethical desire for his team to win, put his team on his back even, and do those types of things. Folks winning a lot of names that we know from the Miracle on Ice, but again, just the impact that had on the whole country from an Olympic standpoint. So what are we connected to that really helps our students develop that autonomy, whether that's a career, purpose, or goal that they want to pursue? It's something that that's the reason why they are pursuing this problem-solving effort. And when it gets hard, the resolve that's needed to persevere, overcome adversity. A lot of those things, again, when I played with Coach Saban, just that overcome adversity quote, many times we've heard that. That's just a big part of that mentality that's embraced. That is the same thing in terms of productive struggle that's involved in mathematics, especially, that we're trying to get students to embrace as well. And again, just this evidence or anecdotal evidence from iconic championship performances relates to that autonomy support focus as well. Positionless versus specialized positions, and this kind of connects to the competence support concern with problem solving, because, like I said, you got the core subjects that each one of these, of course, can tap into. Problem solving can be supported in any core subject. Communication can be supported from any subject. But the idea of, is there a specialized position that we need to emphasize with core subjects versus, this just being kind of fluid and just, it can just happen. And that kind of relates to what we see in sports now. Football, of course, the ultimate team sport. You got that play position, focus, do your job. You try to do somebody else's job, then the team suffers. A lot of that's a big theme in football. But yet you go to basketball, now you got stretch fours, stretch fives, that's your centers and forwards that'll sort of do things that guards do. And, again, even if you don't, not as familiar with a lot of those things, the idea is that people are trying to overlap and do different people's jobs, but that's working in football better than it was will in basketball. Or you got just those rare combinations, the Babe Ruth and Otani, both pitcher and batter that's just, not, heard of that much. Or, just the honor that we do have for people that's able to do a lot of different skills that a lot of other people kind of specialize in from track and field. So again, this is just kind of the support for how an academic coaching framework has to recognize both the need to specialize some of these skills from these different core positions, as much as it's still possible that there's some overlap and benefit in all the other core subjects on each one of these things as well. And then the last component of that, support for relatedness. A lot of those concerns kind of connect to the sports talk debates of, do you attribute it more to the great coach or great players? You have to get students to buy into their responsibility and their role as a student of the game, as a student of what they're supposed to do. That is a kind of independent emphasis we're trying to make with students. but then you still have to have the genuine involvement of a connected teacher. It's not just, of course, you go do it on your own, figure it out, and that's it. You sink or swim on your own. So how do we balance that paradox? And again, when we consider was it Jordan, Kobe, or Shaq, or Phil Jackson, Tom Brady and Belichick debates. Of course,
Tom Brady.
you say that, but you got, the fact that Bill Belichick did not win until he got Tom Brady, and Tom Brady won after him. Mahomes and Andy Reid debates. Andy Reid, of course, he was successful, but never won a Super Bowl before Patrick Mahomes. So, just how much of that, do we try to attribute to just the exceptional player versus the exceptional coach? But again, these type of debates lend to the support that, hey, it takes both, essentially. You can't, really answer this, exclusively one or the other. So it takes both the students' independent responsibility as well as the genuine involvement of that connected teacher as well. And so with the conclusion, hopefully this was just a way of, recognizing the evidence or the lack of evidence for this framework as it's being proposed, and the need to, conceptualize this in a manner that kind of validates it in a way with anecdotal support. And, as much as some people can intuitively embrace this idea that, yeah, as a coach, there are things that's going to help me do my job better as a teacher. I mean, intuitively, we can say that and believe that, but just to provide more academic support for that framework and strategy, that's definitely what the goal of this research was, and this discussion as well. So hopefully, there definitely a desire for more turnkey, kind of plug and play information when we come to these types of events. But I think there are also times where just a deeper reflection on certain concepts and issues in what we do as teachers, I think also kind of helps improve our effort to reach our students and ultimately their success and achievement as well in the classroom. So with that, I'm definitely open to any questions, further discussions anyone would like to have. Sure. Yes.
When can even the most basic elements of academic coaching be introduced to students, given the demands of the curriculum, pacing, and all of that? But how can this be introduced at a very basic level, and how early some aspects of this?
Yeah, and I kind of have to acknowledge that my focus is more high school level, and I guess a lot of my personal assumptions on the elementary and middle school, I guess, but let me explain this way. As a high school coach, I look down and I see Pee Wee football and all those kids playing, and part of me is like, okay, it's good, they're introduced to the game, they get around and play, but sometimes it's like they're developing things that's going to be harder for us to really work out on the high school level. Some of them come to high school just convinced they're better than they really are. A lot of those challenges. Exactly. So I understand that concern of how we introduce these things earlier, and I think hopefully what the earlier intervention should do is reduce the number of students falling through the gaps that this is really going to be more necessary for. I think the better those early interventions work, and there's a lot of them out there, and I think I don't really have a lot of preference, or I'm not gonna say I guess insight into all those on the elementary level. I just know there are a lot of good ones out there. I guess my hope on the elementary level is to reduce the pool of students in those middle and low performing areas that this then becomes a greater need for. So I guess that being said, I guess are there other ways to incorporate, I guess the needs that it addresses, the autonomy, relatedness, confidence. Of course, supporting any of those needs from a self-determination theory standpoint at the earlier level will definitely go a long way to building that foundation that we can tap into to really help bridge those gaps on the high school and secondary level. So I guess again, anything that would relate to those needs, because that's what the whole framework is about. Self-determination is based on how do you help students develop that autonomy. They need the autonomy. That's a part of that approach. The involvement, connecting this piece, which, and I know a lot of that, I think just, I played for Nick Saban, and I like to refer to him because a lot of people know, he doesn't always have the best, I guess, reputation as being likable for some people, but I love Coach Nick. And I knew him on a level that I understood how he was, so that other people see him screaming and hollering on the field and, think he's just this very tough, hard coach. And a lot of those things that may seem negative, the internal aspects of that, in terms of true connectedness, relationship that's built, we began to appreciate, what he was doing and how it, happened. So I guess I'm just saying that to say, even in terms of the relatedness aspect that you're trying to build upon, sometimes don't think that because they may get upset at the process sometimes of a little tough love that we're not doing our job and we're losing it. No, sometimes students will see that down the road and come back and realize, oh, okay, thank you for what you did then, and I appreciate and understand it now. But that was still a foundation of that relationship, interconnectedness need that's being supported as well. And then, is it autonomy, and then confidence. So, at the elementary level, younger level, confidence, I think when you have, and I guess if I look at maybe a Bloom's level, R's of thinking's approach maybe, you're introducing a lot of basic skills then that we're trying to build upon the scaffold. I think just really getting more confidence in those things, that when the more rigorous critical thinking of not having to connect multiple things together, I think that's a big part of, how this can help as well. So again, I think a lot of the effort to do this, if we do that better at the elementary levels, kind of reduces how much this type of framework is necessary for so many middle and low performing students. But I think some of those things can be addressed early as well from those needs perspectives. All right, thank you. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Dr. Parker Holloman,
Uh-huh.
representing the Benjamin Benefit Association.
Yes.
I found the research very interesting.
Mhm. I
wanted to know, where can I find the report?
It's on my computer, but that's why. Take the email down. Can you see that?
Okay.
A lot of this, I'll take that back. Well, the initial framework that I researched, I have published that, and if I send the slides out to you, you'll see that
Okay.
citation in the slides for the initial research I did. But a lot of this is just kind of a combination of a lot of my personal experiences in teaching and coaching, and just kind of connecting that together. So basically, it's just what I have now that I definitely send out to you. Just connect to. Like I said, I know I need my reading glasses, but see if I can expand this a little bit.
It looks different on the screen than it does on the computer, so I totally understand.
Yeah. Mhm. changing a lot of stuff here. So that look a little better there?
Yeah, that looks great.
Go to the red. Okay. Okay. So yeah, just email me. Definitely school or Gmail account, and I can send those slides out to you. And definitely hope it benefits you in your classrooms as well. Any other questions? Well, it gave me an hour, and of course, you know, when I have a lot that I'm trying to cover, you know, I get into that kind of pace of getting through it. So I guess we have plenty of time. Is there anything anybody wants me to kind of go back to and kind of touch on again, maybe?
What is it, like, I'm a high school teacher
Uh-huh.
of lower performing students.
Yes.
So what can I leave here knowing how to implement in my classroom? What is one thing that I can implement in my classroom?
I think I guess the most immediate goal of this, I think more so is, as a teacher, my awareness for some of these things. So hopefully, I guess a deeper reflection and understanding these are needs I'm trying to address as a coach, academic coach.
But I guess
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, again, the how is in the reflective process first. A lot of performance is a forethought approach, then perform, and then refine. So I guess in that concern of taking something here and implement it right away, the performance approach to this is, all right, reflecting on what I'm doing. So that's the thinking, I'm getting tongue tied now. The pre-performance phase of this. So I think where yeah. So when you think about self-regulated learning, things that we're trying to learn, we want our students to learn, and that even as educators, we're learning something to then implement that's going to help our students. You know, immediately, of course, we go through that forethought phase of what are our goals we're trying to implement here. Then we actually try to put it into performance or do it, and then we reflect and modify on it to modify it. So, like I said, as much as there is this desire for these turnkey things, this type of framework really is about an awareness that we have in what we're doing as educators that connect to coaching frameworks that then address these needs that we're going to then see in our students. It's it's kind of like in coaching, I can take someone else's playbook and think I'm just going to carbon copy it and do it, but there's a lot of personalization that went into why that coach is successful with that playbook. So I think there are parts of this that, I mean, in general, this is a playbook. There's still some personalization that has to go on to how each of us is going to make this work in our class for our students. So I guess I'm really not trying to sell this as turnkey, take this, do, and you get immediate results. This is, here's the framework, and the deeper we kind of recognize this general framework and work it for ourselves, we'll probably see those results. That's kind of where we are with a lot of, empirical research efforts that, I can't try to sell you something and guarantee that's going to work because there's so many variables that, that's just the best the correlational data can be in the first place. So I don't try to.
I'm just trying to get a picture of
Yeah.
what it looks like.
Yeah, I get it.
They need to be autonomous.
Uh-huh.
How do we do that?
Yeah.
Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
can you go back to that slide where you had your framework of like the sport antidote, your framework? Because I want to answer her question.
Okay. Sure. This
All
one?
right, go back. Yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I too teach students who perform poorly in math. I'm also certified SPED, so I'm dual certified. So one of the things that I do is I consider, what's my outcome? What do I want to achieve for these students? So once I decide what I want to achieve for my students, I look at where they are, and I have to contour my lessons to meet them where they are, even if it's taking it step by step, one standard at a time, one quiz at a time. So I understand what he's saying. He's saying you have to have an overarching plan. Like, what is your overarching research question? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What effect? How can I effectively bring these students up? So it's like you have to develop a plan of action. You have to know your students. You have to know where they're functioning, and you have to know I can give Susie this type of instruction, but I can't give this to Johnny. So you have to have, like they say, multiple plans in the playbook. You gotta have multiple plays in the playbook to meet those students where they are. Like it's no one size fit all. No one size fits all, I'm saying. So that's why he says habits of the game, study with awareness. Like you have to be aware. Like you have to constantly circulate that room, see who's struggling, see who's excelling. Like you just have to know your students at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to.
And just to kind of add, you know, I'm a coach and I implemented in my instruction. And when I was coming up playing, our coach, the first thing we would do is he would lay out the defense and then he would say, we're going to bird dog this. I don't know what bird dog means,
Yeah.
but I still say it to this day. It gets the student's attention and we do it step by step. I mean, at 17 years old, I was very capable of running over here and blocking a guy, or running over here, running through the two hole, or whatever it may be. But we did it step by step. Step with your right foot, step with your left foot. That's what we did. So when I write an equation on the board, I go through it step by step. Like if there's a fraction involved with the linear equation, we're going to handle that first. And it comes together like a puzzle. So it seems overwhelming at first, but if you just do it piece by piece, then at the end, if you follow all the rules, then you'll arrive at the correct calculation. So for me, it's having your stuff planned out and doing it step by step.
That's like you gotta teach them the thought process, what you're thinking,
Right.
say it
Yeah.
out loud so they understand.
Yeah, just do it step by step. Break it down. Break it down Barney style. That's another thing they would say.
I don't understand this language, so.
What does Barney style mean?
Oh, the sports,
Break it down. Barney was a kids show.
Oh, yeah, dinosaur. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they would say we're gonna break it down Barney style, and they would.
What's bird dog? So it's,
Wow.
Bird dog just means slow motion, step
Slow
by
motion.
step.
so it's good teaching skills
Mhm.
is basically what this is, within that frame. It's the best of how we should be teaching.
Yeah. But like he says,
Yeah.
like, because I mean, we all work together.
Yeah.
We're all coaching. So it's like you cannot step into anything without a playbook. You know, so that's basically what it is. This is your playbook. But from my perspective, like I said, I'm SPED and Algebra 1 certified, so I already know about the struggle. So it's like, I already know. He teaches honors. I teach SPED. We're on two different ends. You know, so it's like I already know stepping in. Yes, he's addressing we're addressing the same standard, but from a different approach.
Right.
So that's basically what he's saying. You know, look at it like if you're coaching. How am I gonna coach these kids? How am I gonna coach these kids? So.
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna add to the discussion is, while you were presenting and you were speaking, it made me really think more about Gloria Latson-Dillon's culturally relevant pedagogy.
Mhm.
And how she takes in the idea that we have to have that relatedness. We have to have that critical
And the rigor,
consciousness.
yeah.
That's right.
That critical consciousness about students, about what they're accustomed to. We also have to keep the standard high,
Mhm.
right? And we gotta have that critical consciousness where students, and what they bring with them to the classroom, we make account for that.
Mhm.
And we differentiate and
Mhm.
modify our strategies based on their needs.
Definitely.
And so a lot of what you're sharing to me, not to discount anything you're saying, because your research is very prominent, it has a lot of connections
Definitely.
with great research that's already out in the field.
Definitely.
But it adds to it, brings in a different light, this coaching idea, which many students who are athletes can really refer to and connect with and have relatedness around.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought up the cultural responses and then high expectations, because
Right.
the rigor expectation is also emphasized in culturally responsive teaching, because you don't want to assume students can't perform something from a certain cultural background, and then that undermines any other culturally relevant efforts that you're putting into. And I'll say too, that's a lot of my mentality as a researcher anyway, that I'm not trying to give specific turnkey answers. It's just a lot of information out there that you're just trying to put together in a way that makes it work for you. But you have to be kind of self-aware of, is this my opinion subjectively, or is this really objectively a connection of something that's then being customized for my goals? And that's the real paradox, that subjective or objective framework that you're working from in whatever research you're pulling together and connecting. So definitely, I appreciate
You've
that.
done a really good job.
Oh, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, roll tide.
Oh,
I'm an
go
Alabama.
Tigers. Go Tigers. I'm sorry.
Go Tigers, Rocky Top.
Oh, you put too much now.
Well, I don't care, but they beat them Saturday.
Yes, ma'am.
I was a volunteer Saturday for 3 hours.
So what I'm seeing in my classes is a lot of AI cheating. How do you instill in those students that big picture, this is not helping you at all,
Exactly.
to keep them from taking that easy way out, to get them to even try, because they don't want to. I can take a picture photo math. I can, are other people seeing that as well?
Well, no, I see
and
it
how
too.
are they dealing with it?
I guess if you kind of connect that to sort of autonomy perspective of, I'm pushing for some higher championship level expectation, hopefully letting them see the failure of that. Let me take away this tool, and can you solve it? And what's going to happen is, they're going to struggle, or they're not going to succeed. And now it's the response. Is the response going to be, oh, well, anyway, you don't really care, which now we're trying to tap into, some relevance that you need this, and then support the effort to do it the right way. And so I think there's a practical side of, kind of tearing down that confidence that this is accomplishing something. And it's kind of like I said about, some of the elementary kids that come to the high school level and hit, the big kids and realize, okay, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I mean, there is a point where that has to occur with self-help tools and all those things that's cheating. But you want to be prepared to pick them up with all right, you can do it the right way. Building that confidence, building that support, from that that relationship of, I need you to accept the truth, but now I'm here to help you, overcome, now the adversity of doing it the right way. I think those are the big picture components that has to occur in that. Now, I guess practically where the rubber hits the road, for some people, maybe a little different how that looks. So definitely anybody else can kind of share on that. But I think that's the main thing. Students have to be confronted with a reality that you're not as good as you think you are doing this. And then their response to that, I think, is now what we're prepared to address, good and bad.
I just tell them you're not gonna be able to use AI when you leave.
That too, yeah.
And you need my class
too.
to graduate.
Well, for me, I start off with old school pencil and paper.
Yeah, oh yeah, I do that
Walk
too.
through those steps, step by step.
Definitely.
So when they see that yes, they can accomplish it, if they actually put their mind to it, that's more encouraging than for my students. Letting them hit that wall and fall. It's much harder to pick them up, especially when they fall in front of peers. It causes a whole nother ball game. But yeah, old school, this is where we're gonna start, then you can get, your laptop and your AI and whatever else, but I know, if I exit ticket, you gave me this, you should be okay.
And then And one of the things that I do is I let them teach each other.
Mhm.
I let them, like, if we're working on something and I notice that I have like one or two kids in the class that keep giving me responses, what I'll do is I'll cold call and I have the next one, cause it's like, okay, I'm looking at data, it's like, okay, you scored such and such, and you should know. So I'll go call them, have them go to the board and teach it to the classmates. And if they can't do it, then I know that they cheated. If they can do, then I know that, you know. So then that lets me know what modifications I need to make. Okay, we're gonna take away instruction and like, I don't know your name, but Miss Lady back here said, we're going old school. So it's like, it's on the spot, immediate feedback for me.
But then, like, you've also got to put it on them too. Like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be mediocre? Do you want to be a champion? Because the football team practices every day. You know, these kids are 16, 17 years old. They know how to tackle. They know how to hold the ball. They know how to catch the thing. But they practice every day because when the event shows up on Friday night, they are confident in executing what they're out there to do. If you're going to wait the night before to try to prepare for the event, that's not really preparation. That's you're having candy for dinner. You're just trying to get by. Like, you have to study every day. You have to make the Zachary football there in the practice of practicing. So you have to get into your practice. And so that way you're confident when you're met with a test or an event or something like that.
And I guess this is another good point. I mean, of course, I'm passionate about the athletic background in this framework, but any competitive extracurricular I think can be used to tap into this. We got a chess student, a debate club member, a mock trial, quiz bowl. I think anything where you're trying to perform a skill at a high level and compete and win, we can tap into that connection with those types of students. Band festivals, they want to compete. We have a national championship dance troupe, was in Walt Disney World. I mean, I think, that kind of connects, or that kind of adds to the, diversity of, your students still being able to kind of tap into this adversity, overcoming effort to be rigorous and achieve something, but not necessarily with sports. It's just the framework that I've come from and can connect to and help to frame this as well.
Unless they see the relevance in it, they're not gonna take it seriously, so.
Yeah.
Now, if you had players, would it be possible to not practice Monday through Wednesday, have them show up on Thursday, give them and say, we're gonna play? You could win it, you could win a game, but you're not gonna build a dynasty like that. That's not a way.
Well, I appreciate everybody's input as well. Like I said, this is not I got it all figured out, take it and do it. This is, we all trying to figure it out together. So definitely appreciate all that. Email me if you want those slides and I'll be glad to send them out. All right, y'all have a good day.
Idiots that question.
Oh, boy, now, Bob.
Yeah.
I'm sick of you.
The other ones, I'm with you, but.
Y'all like Tom Brady, sorry. All right, Dr. Thomas, we'll see.
All
I
right.
don't think he's the greatest quarterback ever. Hey, good stuff, Doctor.
Oh, yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for the input.
Thank you for